What's up, Algebra 1A? All right, so today we're going to talk about probability of multiple step events. We've already done simple probability, but I'll review that very quickly because I know it's been a while. So probability, real simple, is the chances of something happening. That's all it is. So that something in math we call an event. So I put that in there. So when we're talking about probability, we're talking about the chances of something happening. Now, keep in mind, we can report probability as a decimal, as a percent, and as a fraction. For our purposes, we're going to stay with fractions. They're easier to work with if we want to go further with it. And I know you guys prefer decimals or percents, but we are going to stay with fractions. If you have your TI-83 or TI-30, sorry, you can use that. If not, don't forget you can pull up Desmos and you can do fractions in there. So you don't have to worry about the calculations, just what we're actually doing. So in math, we define probability as the number of favorable events divided by the total number of possible events. So real quick review. If I talk about like flipping a coin, if I say I'm going to flip a coin, what's the probability of getting a heads? Well, real simple. The number of favorable events on there, or the number of heads on the coin, is 1. The total number of possible events coming out of there is, of course, 2. You can get a heads or a tails. So that gives you a probability of 1/2. It's that simple. Don't forget, all your fractions should be reduced. If I talk about like rolling a die, number cube, okay? And of course we know that a die has 1 through 6 on it. So if I say, what's the probability of me getting an even number on there? Well, I know that on the number cube you have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So you have 2, 4, and 6. So you have 3 total even numbers on that number cube. And since there's 1 through 6, you have 6 total possible events. So 3 out of 6, and of course that would reduce to 1/2. That would be my overall probability. Do not forget, when you're doing these probabilities, if I said to you with that number cube or die, if I said, what's the probability of me rolling that and getting a number less than 10? Well, that probability, of course, I'll put that as this, number less than 10. That is 100%. There's 6 numbers on there. Out of 6 total options, that means your probability is 1 or 100%, which means it always has to happen. Likewise, if I said, I hope you guys can see this at the bottom, if I said, what's the probability of getting a number greater than 10? Well, there are no numbers on there greater than 10, so there are 0 favorable events, and there are 6 total events, but 0 divided by any number other than 0 is simply 0, which means that event cannot happen. So we're looking at a range of probabilities between 0 and 1, 0 meaning cannot happen, 1 meaning has to happen, and any fraction therein is the probability of that occurring. Of course, the closer it is to 0, the less likely it's going to happen. The closer it is to 1, the more likely it is going to happen. So that's a real quick review of probability. Since we've done that, I'm hoping that's sufficient. Now, today, we're going to talk about the probability of multiple step events. So this time, instead of me like just finding a simple probability, I'm going to say, what's the probability of getting this and then this? So we're going to talk about that real simple. So if I say, what's the probability of A, then B, it's a real simple thing to figure out. You just simply do the probability of A, and you multiply that by the probability of B. And we could do this for as many steps as you want. Say I had probability of A, then B, then C, then D. You would simply find the probability of each thing and then multiply it together. Now, we'll do a real quick example, but one of the things we got to keep in mind is whether or not what we're doing has replacement. Let me show you. So let's take a jar, and in that jar, let's have 3, blue, 4 yellow, and 3, let's say red marbles. Now, where does replacement come in? let's say I want to find the probability of getting a blue marble and then a red marble. So now we have multiple steps. We have 2 steps, in fact. So real simple, the question is, okay, if I reach in there for a blue marble, I know that the number of favorable is 3 and the total number here is 10. So my probability of getting that blue marble is going to now be multiplied times the probability of getting that red marble. Now, this is where replacement comes in. When I pull that marble out, we're going to go to the second probability, assuming the first happened. So if I pull that blue marble out, do I put it back or not? Okay. So for right now, we're going to call this with replacement. Meaning, I pull that blue marble out, I put it back in the jar, shake it up, and then I reach back in and grab another one. So if I go back in for the red, my jar is the same as what I started with. So when I go for red, I know that there's also 3 total favorable out of 10 overall marbles in that bag. So my overall probability is 9 out of 100. So notice as you add steps to your probability, the chances of it occurring goes down and down and down, usually. So let's do the same thing, only this time, then red. Only this time, let's not replace it. So this will be without replacement. Okay, so this time we assume, okay, I reach into my jar, I want to get a blue marble. I know that there's 3 total blue, and there's 10 total marbles in the jar. But this time, when I go to my next probability, we assume the first one happened, so I pulled the blue one out of that jar. So now when I go to the second probability, I go, okay, I took a blue out of the jar. So what does that mean? My jar now only has 2 blue. Now when I go to find the probability of red, there's still 3 red marbles in that jar, but this time there is only 9 total marbles. Why 9? We assumed the first came out, there was no replacement, so I did not put that back in. So now I'm looking at just 9 total marbles in my jar. So when I multiply this across, again, you can use your calculator. I could also reduce this to 1/3. Either way, I'm going to wind up with 9 over 90, and that, of course, will reduce to 1/10. Simple enough. Notice those probabilities are actually very close to each other. This 10/10 would also reduce to 1/10. This one is a little larger, I mean slightly larger, simply because we have less marbles the second time we reach in. There's 1 less. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and have you try an example. We'll take this back to 3 blue. So let's have you try probability of yellow, then red. And for this guy, let's have replacement. So with replacement. So I want you to go ahead, pause the video, find that probability. Okay, so we have probability of yellow, then red, and there is replacement. So again, multiple step probability. I simply take probability of my first step times probability of my second step. My first step is to pull a yellow out of there. Well, the probability of my yellow is 4 out of 10. There's 4 yellow, 10 total marbles. Since we assumed the first one came true, I got the yellow. We did replace it, so my jar still has the same number of marbles in it. So my second probability, the red, is now going to be 3 favorable. There's 3 red in there, and 10 total. So all I have to do is multiply those together and then reduce. That, of course, I'm a little out of room here. It's 12 over 100, which would reduce. They're both divisible by, what, 4. So that would give me 3/25. So for our, hopefully we got that. So for our next one, probability of, let's do red, then blue. And this time it's going to be without replacement. Go ahead and give that one a whirl. Come on back. So we have no replacement this time. So my probability of red, there are 3 red out of 10 total. We should know that by now. This time we assume that that first probability came true. There is no replacement. So what we're going to do is when we go back for the blue, we've got to remember we're assuming the first one came true. There are now only 2 red marbles in my jar. So when I go for the second step of this, getting a blue, there's still 3 blue marbles. But this time there is only 9 total marbles in my jar. We already took the red out. We assume that happened. So when I multiply this together, I'm looking at 9/90ths, which of course should reduce to 1/10. Hopefully that's simple enough. There is a Google form, 3 questions, literally 3 questions. First one's simple probability, like we did with our quick review. Then there's one with replacement, one without replacement. Give those a whirl. If you got them, cool, awesome. Don't forget, we'll have a Google Meet on Tuesday. If you're struggling with it a little bit, we can talk, we can get you there. So get those 3 done. Remember, everything has to be done by Wednesday. So we will see you later. Hope everybody's safe, happy, well. Don't forget, wash your hands, help around the house. See you guys.